everyone, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I am Midge Munster. And Penny, this week I did something for the first time. You already know. I tried the General Mills monster cereals for the very first
Oh,
time
yes.
in my
Yeah.
entire life.
hmm
Uh, I wasn't allowed to have sugary cereals as a kid, and so I had never had them, and it got me in like just thinking about why are these such a staple for so many folks this time of year, and I wanted to know more. They've been around for over 50 years and they have a really long history, so I wanted to dig into it, and I'm really excited. I learned so much, and this was such a fun episode to prep for. First of all, Penny, have you had any of the monster cereals?
Not since I was a kid.
Okay, but you did have them as a
I
kid.
was permitted to eat sugary cereal as a
Ah,
kid.
good for
Um,
you.
but so the monster cereals were never like a fave. Like I think just because they were seasonal, like my mom tended to buy like the same things.
hmm
Like I definitely had Count Chocula. I was a big chocolate cereal girl.
Yeah, I
I'm
will say I tried all of them, and of them, Chocula was definitely my favorite. It was very good.
good. I'm glad I had good taste. Yeah, I so I actually listened to a cereal podcast.
Oh,
Um
the empty bowl or whatever it's called.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I it's funny because I don't really eat much cereal
Mhm.
nowadays, but I very much enjoy hearing about cereal. So I'm very excited to dig into this bowl with you, Midge, and hear
Yeah.
more about the monster
I'm
cereal.
so glad I could bring you something you're so weirdly invested in.
It's just fun. I don't know. Sometimes there are things where I'm like, I don't have really any interest in doing this, but I sure do like to hear
I
about
sure
it.
want to know about it. Hey, I listened to a podcast about tacos, so we all
There
have our
you go.
things. Okay, so where did the monster cereals start? They didn't come out till 71, but the history starts a bit before that, when Lucky Charms was debuted in 1964, and it was a huge success. It was,
Mhm.
a fruity marshmallow cereal. And General Mills wanted to add to their repertoire. They wanted to add a chocolate marshmallow cereal and a strawberry marshmallow cereal. But they wanted to have a really strong ad campaign behind it, because the Lucky Charms, I guess his name is Lucky,
His name is Lucky the Leprechaun.
Lucky the Leprechaun, was doing really well for them, not just in cereal sales, but as far as, the commercials and things. Kids were really into this mascoted character for the cereal. So General Mills hired a marketing company, specifically the marketing company who came up with the Trix Rabbit, and asked them to come up with a marketing campaign for a chocolate and strawberry marshmallow cereal. And it was actually a copywriter named Lori Levine who was
Hey.
tasked with coming up with this. And she came up with the idea to parody these monster figures and came up with the names Count Chocula and Frankenberry.
I love a lady who's like, I need to come up with something that's universally appealing. It should be spooky.
It should be
It should
monsters.
be monsters, right? A vampire.
Yes. Well, and which this is where I love, because this is the spot where all of my loves in this world meet each other. Because what was happening at the time, like I said, this is 1964, the monster craze of the 60s was in
Oh,
full swing.
yes. Yes, indeed.
And monsters were being made accessible to children because of shows like The Addams Family and The Munsters that had came out like this year, 1964. um, they had already paved the way for the idea of the monsters being humorous, like not just
hmm
horror characters, being fun and funny. And so they knew that they could take these monster ideas and market them to children and make them fun. Captain Crunch was also like huge at this point, and so they wanted this kind of like funny, slapsticky, serial character. And George Carn, who's the, again, Trix Rabbit, the artist who drew up the original Trix Rabbit, drew up the first images of Count Chocula and Frankenberry. and they took this to market. Now this is where you're gonna, I think, be surprised, because I didn't know this either, and you and I were very much alive and children while this was happening. So in March 1971, the cereals hit the shelves for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Now notice I said March of 1971. These cereals were a year-round cereal
Hell yeah.
and were released for year-round consumption, not as a Halloween-specific thing. We'll get into this later, but this continued, Penny, until 2010.
Huh. I feel like I do remember Count Chocula at least
I
existing.
literally had no recollection of these being year-round cereals when we were kids. Uh,
Yeah.
but wild. And I love that. That's, yes, please,
Right,
more of
goals.
that.
I was wondering where we were going with this when you were like, we were definitely
We were
alive in
alive. March
1971.
1971.
And I was like,
Penny,
were we though? I know you like to say I'm older than you, but I was not alive in 1971.
Now's a bad time to tell our audience that we're immortal vampires.
Oh.
Whoops. My bad.
Save it for another episode.
Yeah. Oh God, we were going to do that for the 100th.
We're focused on cereal today, Midge. This isn't
about
the time.
Cereal. So anyway, monsters. The commercials for these cereals were what really made them take off. So again, they were looking for this kind of slapsticky humor. Count Chocula and Frankenberry were introduced as like I said, parodies of the monsters. Count Chocula, the voice actor, did a Bela Lugosi impression, and Frankenberry, the actor, did a Boris Karloff impression. And they had this rivalry going on for who had the better cereal. They were released at the same time, and they were fighting back and forth about which cereal kids liked better. And as most marketing campaigns do, all of the commercials kind of followed a similar formula, is what I was trying to say there, where, they would be going back and forth. And then the punchline was always that something smaller than them, like a child or a small animal, would enter the picture and say, like, I like both the cereals. And they would both get scared shitless and run away. So the funny thing, right, is that they're monsters and they're scared of everything.
Yes.
Now let's get into this a bit. I'm gonna derail the cereal talk, because one thing about me is that if we can talk about why something might be gay, I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna talk about it, because my first kind of reason why I wanted to delve into the cereal history and try them and everything in the first place was when you and I were at Midsummer Scream.
Yes.
And they asked Brian Fuller what his introduction to horror was, and he brought up the monster cereals. And in his talk about this, he was like, those cereals are inherently queer, and you can't tell me that Count Chocula and Frankenberry aren't boyfriends. And I was like, tee-hee, that's funny. I love you, Brian Fuller. And I didn't think that much more about it. I was like, oh, that's cute. Haha. Then I watched the commercials, Penny. I watched the commercials. And as far as them being scared of everything, it's very much playing into this like trope that we saw in a lot of like older Disney animation of like big elephants that had like a lisp and were scared of mice, you know? Like I hate to use this term, but like the sissy boy, like kind of
like a limp wrist stereotype.
Yes, very like stereotyping of queer people, queer men specifically. And so Count Chocula and Frankenberry, first of all, really fall into this. Every time they get spooked, they're like jumping into each other's arms. One of the commercials, they literally like jump into a bed together and the bed folds into the wall. Like, it's
like
gay.
You do with your best bro.
And they were roommates. Like,
roommates.
History will say they were best friends. Like, yeah, very, and like the bickering is very that of an old married couple. They live in this castle together. The further I delve into the commercials, like Frankenberry is sitting at a vanity, literally powdering his face and his nose. Like, just all these like stereotypical situations. And then I get to a commercial, looks like it was probably like 1975-ish. They're getting ready to go trick-or-treating, both of them in separate
Mhm.
rooms. And then it shows two doors and they say, okay, we're coming out. And then they both come out of the doors in dresses to go trick-or-treating.
Nice.
You can't tell me that these aren't queer-coded
Right. Two
characters.
old queens.
You can't tell me. So that's all. I just
This
had
is
to take
telling
a moment.
I gotta watch these commercials now.
Go watch
I
the
wanna get into the
commercials.
Monster Cereal cinematic universe.
Yeah. Yes. And I know that I'm sure there are going to be people, not our listeners probably, because they're all great and they know that we're,
Yes.
us, but there are going to be people who are mad at anyone insinuating this because they're like, those are for children. Well, children love the gays. What can I say?
It's true.
And these characters are queer coded and I love them. So anyway, that was my. I was gonna say that's not Midge's science corner. I don't know what that is. It's a sidebar of why is this gay with Midge Munster. Anyway, back to our timeline. So they, like I said, they came out in 1971. The cereal franchise has its first big scandal in 1972
Mhm.
when a child, or apparently multiple children, were checked into hospitals for possible internal hemorrhaging and rectal bleeding.
Ooh, that's no good.
But turns out it wasn't rectal bleeding. It was just that General Mills was using red dye number 2 at this point to make the electric pink for Frankenberry,
Yeah, oh.
which is a synthetic dye that the human body cannot digest and is now outlawed from being used in food, but at the time in 1972 was perfectly legal.
YOLO.
So this condition literally becomes called Frankenberry stool. um yeah, and the dye gets pulled out of the cereals pretty shortly after that, and
Yeah,
a few
probably a good
years
choice.
yeah, a few years later is when red dye number 2 becomes not approved for food use. But some people think that this instance was what caused for a new cereal release in 1973 to change the dialogue around monster cereals, because as you can imagine, it's a bit of a PR nightmare for Frankenberry stool to be going around
Yes.
the news. So in 1973, our friend Booberry joins the brigade.
Blueberry.
Booberry. And this is, I was excited. I love to tell you stuff, Penny. So Booberry is voiced by Paul Frees.
Ah! I love it.
I was like, I think I didn't know for sure if you would know, but I was like, I think she knows
Yes,
exactly who the
I
hell that is.
know.
So if you don't know, Paul Frees is a very famous voice actor and is the voice of the ghost host in the
Mm,
American Haunted Mansion. So that was very exciting. He's a a horror voice staple already
yes.
when he comes in to voice Booberry, and he models the voice of Booberry after Peter Lorre, another wonderful horror actor, often
Mhm.
featured with Vincent Price. Very specific voice. If you have not heard Peter Lorre's voice, you can, if you've seen Corpse Bride, that is not his voice, but the person who voices the maggot
Yeah.
that lives inside Emily's head is also doing a Peter Lorre impression. So he sounds like the maggot from Corpse Bride. Booberry does. And so Booberry is a little blue ghost, and he
Mhm.
brings in a blueberry flavored, allegedly the first ever blueberry flavored
Yes.
cereal. And he shows up for the first time in a commercial and scares the boots off of Frankenberry and Count Chocula. And he was often depicted in the commercials as kind of the underdog of this main trio. And again, the commercial setup was very formulaic. We would have the commercial start with Count and Frank arguing about whose cereal was better, and then Boo would show up and be like, actually, my cereal's the best. And then it was this that brought Count and Frank together, because then they would gang up on Boo
Ah.
and be like, F you. we don't even like you. We have better cereals. So Boo ends up kind of becoming a beloved character by a lot of people because he keeps getting just like shat on by Count and Frank, and he's like arguably a much more likable character because they're like being really nasty about it, and Boo is just like, but my cereal is really good too. But one particular instance that I want to bring up of Booberry love that really takes the cake is a gentleman named Roger Barr, who is the self proclaimed world's biggest Booberry fan.
Okay.
And this man was featured on VH1's Totally Obsessed and also Food Network's Unwrapped, which
Mm-hmm.
great show. Loved Unwrapped.
Yes, very good.
But he had this huge Booberry collection. They would show clips of him like walking through the store and just filling carts with Booberry, and he would be wearing like a Booberry beanie, a Booberry sweatshirt, Booberry sweatpants. Like it was a whole thing. And I'm sure a lot of it is a shtick, right?
Yeah.
But he does run, even to this day, a Booberry fan site that is still active. And you can join the Booberry gang over there. But he was very adamant that Booberry never got the credit that he
Oh.
deserved because Count Chocula and Frankenberry were the OGs. So the trio becomes really, again, largely popular in part due to the marketing campaigns that are behind them. At this point is when the boxes start coming with like prizes inside as well.
Ooh.
So we get, rings and eraser heads and glow in the dark stickers and coloring kits and all kinds of things. Little like punch out monster masks from the back of the boxes. And then in 1979, they make a monster theme set of records that they called flexi discs. That were I don't really it looked, the ones I was looking at, they looked like they were cardboard, like it
Ooh.
was part of the box,
Yeah.
but that can't possibly be true. I don't really understand how they worked. um but they had several like radio adventures on them, basically, like you could listen to the monsters have like a little play. So one of them was titled Monster Adventures in Outer Space, which was the story of the monsters saving a planet of teddy bears from an evil alien.
Nice.
And then they also have one that was, I actually listened to all of these, by the way. You can find them on YouTube. They also have the Monsters Go Disco, where they go out to the disco and they start a new dance craze. And it was very Do the Lurch, like
I
very
was just gonna say,
same
I'm like,
vibes.
oh, these monsters and their dance crazes.
I know. I think I need to start making a series of like Instagram reels where I do all the weird monster dance crazes from the
Yes.
60s.
Do it.
So General Mills then tried for many years, many times, to add a fourth monster to the gang, but was never really fully successful. Fruit Brute was introduced in 1974, originally with a generic fruit flavor of cereal and lime marshmallows. And Brute was a little werewolf guy that was characterized by him going, fruit! And he lasted from 1974 to 1982, but I could only find like 2 commercial campaigns with him over all those years. He's not in hardly any of the marketing campaigns. However, Quentin Tarantino was apparently a big fan of the cereal, and you can spot Fruit Brute in Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs long after the cereal was discontinued.
Oh, there you go.
It pops up time to time. Very cool. Other than Fruit Brute, we had several attempts, like I said, at adding different characters into the mix. Something I did find that I was very excited about, there was apparently talk of adding a Bride of Frankenberry at one point, and they did do like a design mock up for her, and she is iconic. Like her, you know, you guys know what Bride of Frankenstein
Mm-hmm.
hair looks like, but it's like a strawberry on top of her head that
Ooh.
like comes, like the point of the strawberry comes down on top of her head like a little hat. It's like so cute. But I think we know why Frankenberry doesn't have a bride and why that didn't work out. Uh, then in 1987, the Monster cereals had their second big scandal. And this one's a rough one. I'm not gonna lie. And we're gonna get into a little bit of some kind of like dark anti-Semitic stuff, just
Ooh.
as a warning. Um, so basically, the monsters meet their counterparts in this campaign. So Frankenberry had a commercial where he got to star alongside Frankenstein's monster, and then Count Chocula meets Bela Lugosi in his commercial. And part of this campaign was that they superimposed the images of the original monsters onto the cereal boxes with the characters. And due to this, is I guess what is generally said is that due to some really bad enhancement jobs that were done on the image of Bela Lugosi, Dracula's medallion showed up as what appeared to be a Star of David.
Hmm.
So, which, like, okay,
Yeah.
but this is where this gets particularly problematic. There is something called blood libel, in
Oh,
which
yeah.
Jewish folks were accused of kidnapping Christians, often babies, to drink their blood.
Yeah.
Hence why it's a big freaking issue to show a Star of David on a vampire.
Yeah. That's no
So,
good.
yeah, so of course, General Mills got slapped with a lot of anti Semitism accusations, which valid, and General Mills released an apology for the misunderstanding. I saw different records. Some said that the boxes were pulled from shelves, but then I also saw several accounts saying that General Mills issued an apology but refused to pull the boxes down. So I don't know what happened with that, but either way, yikes. But what do we do when we have a PR nightmare, Penny?
We introduce a new monster
We
cereal.
introduce new cereal. Distraction. So, Yummy Mummy comes out
Hey.
in 1988. And that is, he was originally released as a fruit flavored cereal. Again, just a generic fruit flavor with vanilla marshmallows. And then for a while in the ad campaigns, Yummy Mummy seemed to replace Blueberry entirely. We didn't see Blueberry for a hot minute in any of the marketing campaigns. Both in, I almost said both in computers, both in commercials and print. So Yummy Mummy then was around for a while, like I said, kind of showing up in a lot of commercials and print campaigns instead of Blueberry, and then he went back to his tomb in 1992, and we don't really see him again after that. But as the marketing campaigns and TV kind of became less prominent, we see a lot of like shifts in the late 90s and early 2000s of them like trying to stay relevant.
Yeah.
um Specifically a lot of stuff with Count Chocula, because I think he was kind of the cereal that was really holding down the fort.
Yeah.
Like we had a Count Chocula crossover with Scooby-Doo marshmallows,
Ooh.
and with the Casper release we had like Casper and Wendy marshmallows in the cereal. And they did, there was this really weird thing where they did like a CD release with Count Chocula, and it had like the Baja Men on it. There was like a
Of
whole,
course it did.
yeah. So they were doing a whole bunch of different things, but just the cereals just kind of started to taper off.
Yeah.
And so eventually in, like I said, 2009 into 2010, the cereals, that was when they transitioned into being a seasonal release.
Yeah, that is crazy. Like I
Right?
I would have definitely said that they were seasonal growing
Yeah,
up.
always. Yeah. Yeah. Which, yeah, like I was like, I was in high school. That's crazy. That feels wrong, but the history doesn't lie.
No.
Then in 2013, they did kind of a cool thing where they brought back all the monsters together for the first time ever. They brought back Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy that year with the three others, and they saw a little bit of a change at this point. Yummy Mummy was an orange cream flavored cereal this time, which honestly sounds really good.
Yeah.
I'd like to try that. And then Fruit Brute, this is when he becomes cherry flavored. He also, this was when they changed the name from Fruit Brute Fruit Brute with the normal spelling to Fruit Brute, as I like to call it, where he is now spelled Frute.
Ah.
Uh, I tried to figure out why this happened. There were some suggestions that it changed because of like legal reasons, that they couldn't call it fruit legally
Yeah,
because that
I
implied that
know
there was fruit in
I
the
don't
cereal.
know if it's true, but I've heard people say that about Fruit Loops.
Oh, why
So
it's
that it's
OOT and
OOT because there's not actually any fruit in it, but I don't know if I can't
mm,
confirm if that's accurate.
I don't know. My speculation is that all I'm saying is that he's a werewolf wearing rainbow overalls and press-on nails, and maybe they thought they shouldn't call
Mm.
him a fruit anymore. That's all I'm saying. More fodder for my my gay monster canon. Speaking of which,
Hey.
my favorite thing I found in my research was that in 2018 there was a freak. Penny, I can't.
I'm gonna say you're real hype for this one.
There was a Frankenberry billboard released out of nowhere. They put it on Sunset Boulevard, and it's a a billboard in the style of like the old Angeline billboards,
Uh-huh.
with Frankenberry like sprawled out, like laid with his hand behind his head and one on his hip in his little pink tight jumpsuit. And it says Frankenberry in like this gorgeous cursive writing above him. It's a completely pink billboard.
Incredibly heterosexual.
A very hetero marketing campaign for Frankenberry. Um, and he's got cakes in it too. I'll tell you what, it they knew what they were doing. So this is 2018. It led to a website that was called Work with the Monsters,
Mm-hmm.
and it was part of, I guess, a campaign where they were trying to get like studios and writers and people to pitch ideas to get a like monster cinematic presence, basically. um I know they also were approached around this similar time. I think it was actually a bit before this, but these artists came to General Mills and were like, "Hey, we know you're only doing the serials like seasonally now, but these characters are really beloved and recognizable. You need to do like basically pitch packages with these images and take it to places like license to do, now we have like the big like retro go-go monster masks that you
Yeah.
can buy, like the big masks, or you can buy all kinds of monster merch now. I feel like especially in the last several years I'm seeing a lot more of it. I believe that artist's name is Galan, is the last name, that did that rebranding for them to license out the images of the characters. um, but yeah, I apparently in 2018, I would love to see. I mean, nothing's come of that yet, but I would love to see if in the next few years we get some monster cinematic masterpieces.
I was gonna say it sounds like you have some ideas, Midge.
I could, yeah. Somebody from General Mills, call me. I'm ready to produce a full like Odd Couple
Yes.
show with Frankenberry and Count Chocula. I have endless scenarios prepared for you.
Yes. As Laszlo says, gay is in, gay is hot.
Gay is
I
in, gay
want
is
some gay,
out.
gay it's gonna be.
And that brings us up to last year, which was the 50th anniversary of the release of
Wow.
Chocula and Frankenberry. And as many of you who are well vested in the Halloween community probably know, that was when they released the Monster Mash cereal. Um, they did an animated short in the style of Behind the Music, showing all the monsters getting like interviewed about getting the band back together and how they were all going to be in the same place for the first time. And they did a recording that was released on Spotify of Monster Mash, sung by all the monsters. It was really cute. I actually
Yeah,
really
I
liked.
remember that. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
cute.
I actually really really liked this. And again, it's so reminiscent of the 60s. It was, perfect. It was very like watching the Beatles reunite or
Yeah.
something. It was very very cute. Um, and then they released with that the Monster Mash cereal, which was the first time that pieces from every monster cereal were together in one box. I will say I did try this a few days ago, and it was, to me, one of the worst things I've ever eaten.
Yeah, I remember when they were releasing this, and I was like, I don't see why those things would be good
I,
together.
I don't see why we
I,
need to do that.
that doesn't that like the concept is very cute. I like the idea, but
Yeah.
as soon as you're like, are these tastes that belong together in my
Do
bowl?
we
It's like
need that?
I don't think they are.
No, and they're not, and I can attest. Yeah, but the packaging was very cute as a marketing campaign. It was very smart,
Yeah.
and they also did re-release the cereals in their original like retro packaging last
Oh,
year,
that's
and
fun.
as well as this year, they are still in that packaging. And this year they brought back Fruit Brute, so I had the pleasure of trying him as well. And I say pleasure I don't mean it wasn't a
Loosely.
uh, yeah. So maybe I'd be interested. It seems like we're kind of having a resurgence though with them. So maybe we'll see some Yummy Mummy next year. I think that would be really exciting. I'd like
Maybe
to try
so.
the orange cream cereal. Um, but yeah, it's really fun and interesting to kind of dive into this. And I was going to say, some of you may know this if you watched my video trying these, but I did make what I am calling now, because one of my subscribers called it this, and I said yes, yes, I'm Midge Munster, and I approve this message. They called it the Munster Mash because I made my own mashup of cereals
Ooh.
where I only mixed Count Chocula and Frankenberry
Oh,
to make
the true OTP. So
yes, and they because it's chocolate and strawberry, and those together are delicious, and I think you should all try it. I think
yeah,
you
that
should.
sounds like a good pairing.
Yes, and they are a good pairing, aren't they?
They sure are.
This is actually the gay agenda. It's just we want canon Frankenberry and Count Chocula are
Right? I
boyfriends.
mean, I feel like when you make one chocolate and one strawberry, you're saying that
You're
they
saying
belong
they
together.
go
So
together. They knew what they were doing. Well, this has been my deep dive into monster cereals. I hope you all found this as interesting as I did. And if you have not yet tried the monster cereals, go and give them a try. They're all at Target right now for sure, is where I've seen them. I don't know where. Uh, I don't know if they're anywhere else, but they're definitely at Target. Go try them out. Um, if you grew up with these cereals, please let us know what your favorite is. I would love to know. I've actually seen a lot of people say that Boo Berry is their favorite.
hmm.
It is good. It's a little sweet for me, but
Yeah, I've
the
never been a big fruit cereal
I'm
person,
not either. I'm not either.
but I am I will try the Munster mix and
Yeah,
see
get
how
in
that
there.
goes.
Get in there. Well, thank you all so much for listening today. If you are enjoying Ghouls Night In podcast, remember that you can leave us a review wherever you listen, and we would love to hear what you have to say. If you leave us a review, we might just read it live right here on the air. And I believe we do have a review to share today, don't we, Penny?
We sure do, Midge. This is a 5-star review from Mike W's Music. Is titled One Word: Spoozy, spooky plus cozy.
Oh,
I love it.
Spoozy. We're changing the name of the pod to Spoozy.
Yes. Uh, um, this review states, I love this podcast. It's super cozy with the perfect amount of spooky. I love listening to Midge and Penny's take on movies, as well as their insight on spooky traditions and other fun topics. Today I learned about spider webs and how they're made in a really
Hell
fun
yeah.
way. Hell yeah. I find their voices incredibly soothing, and this is an awesome, entertaining, and relaxing podcast. I'm thrilled to give it a 5-star rating.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it.
And if you are looking for more content from us, remember that you can follow us on Instagram over at Ghouls Night in Pod. We post photos of anything we talk about on the episodes and share lots of fun, silly stuff in our stories. So we'd love to have you join us over there. And if you are looking for me, you can find me across all platforms at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And that's all until next time.
Good.
Good. Bye.
Bye.